Yo, welcome back to another episode of Mailbag Monday by the Money Matters podcast. My name is Jack. I've got Dylan. I've got Bill. And we're joined once again by Brookie Cookie. That's what we used to call her growing up. That is my stepmother, Brookie Cookie, a.k.a. Cookie. How you guys doing?
Good.
Brooke, thanks for joining back. How have you been?
Good. It's a little early in the morning for us in California. Well, not for him, but usually for me, which is why I never join you guys. But today I'm trying to get up and awake. We're doing great. And what
Good.
country are you guys in?
The UK. Dialing in from the UK. A fresh cup of tea.
Cheeky point, isn't it?
A cheeky point of Guinness. Ooh, that maybe have been Irish. I don't know. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin, not to talk about the United Kingdom. And we've got Brooke, I think, for a bit of a special episode. So before I pass it to Dylan, I think we heard your guys' feedback a bit loud and clear. Listen, Bitcoin, you actually hilariously today is blasting through 65,000. We'll see if that will be sustained and if we can make a new all-time high soon. But I think since March, we've been between, call it 40K and 70K. It's been a lot of range bound. It's been a lot of Fed watching. It's been a lot of sideways. It's been a lot of summer vacations, policymakers taking breaks, going on vacation. And we got the feedback that some of the conversation was a little recycled, a little bit of, okay, we understand assets are going up. We understand what you guys think about Fed. We understand that Jack comes from a younger generation that's less optimistic about financial authorities, and Bill's been in financial markets almost twice as many years as Jack's been alive, and that we get all that. And we kind of want to hear something new. And so Dylan, as the agenda author, the director of the show, has a concept that I think was based on Bitcoin Amsterdam.
Yeah, exactly. So I was having a conversation with some of you all, some of the listeners here, and I think there's a little bit of a desire to break up the monotony of Bitcoin podcasts and sort of the content that they're spewing out. So I listen to a Bitcoin podcast, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 times a week. And even I'm starting to feel a little bit of fatigue. And so as someone who's in charge of building the agenda for one, thinking through just different ways to sort of differentiate ourselves. And of all of the podcasts that I've heard Jack do, I've never heard a podcast about Jack and sort of how he got from, this chess playing 5-year-old to this CEO of what we believe, although a bit biasly, is the best Bitcoin company on planet Earth. And so I think together we all have a pretty unique perspective to bring this story to life. And then alternatively, I believe it is the 5-year anniversary this week. I might have stolen that punchline from you, Brooke, so apologies, but it's the 5-year anniversary of when Strike was thought of. I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but I think that we'll get into that a bit more. But I think a good place to start with this story is with the hobby that I've known you the longest to have played and been good at, which is chess. And so I believe, maybe we cut this, might be too much doxing, but some emails or previous emails you've used were like Jimmy Mao's chess. And like, as long as I've known you, you've been this chess savant. And so how did you get into chess? How did chess become part of your life?
Sure. By the way, for the audience, Dylan conceptualized this. We were in Amsterdam and we hosted a private, for the whale passes in the back of the conference. Also for Brooke and my dad. We hosted this thing in the back of the conference, and a lot of the questions I got was about being a founder, some of the behind the scenes stuff, not necessarily price predictions or Bitcoin difficulty adjustment explanations, but it was more building a business, being a Bitcoiner. Why do I stake so much? And so I think that was really what inspired it for Dylan. But I told him, I was like, if it's going to be my best friend and my parents on a podcast, it's going to come off like a little self-serving, as if I'm just asking them to compliment me for an hour and post it to YouTube. And that's, just to be clear to the audience and to you guys, is not what I'm doing. You guys are more than welcome to tell all of the embarrassing stories that you want as well. And this conversation can go wherever you want. How did I get into chess? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always remembered playing chess. I don't even remember that answer. So I think Dad, and this is long before you met Brooke. If you have a better answer than I do, I don't even remember.
I don't know when you started playing chess. I don't remember.
I mean, I remember. 5 years old, I was playing. I remember I had a chess coach that actually would stay over at the house sometimes with us. I was that into it.
What was her name? She was Russian, right?
Yeah, my chess coach's name was Tamara.
Yeah, that's right.
But even before Tamara, I had a coach. So I got into chess. I think I was just playing with, I'm sure my dad or mom taught me at some point, and I was good at it. And everyone enjoys doing things that they're good at to some extent. And so I was always competing at something. And for a while that was chess. I don't know if that
Did you like
satisfies
it?
your
Do you
itch.
remember? Do you remember liking it? Because this is before I was on the scene.
Yeah. I mean, I still play chess to this day, every single day. Not nearly as competitively, but I've always described chess as the art of seeing yourself forward, is the way I like to put it. There is a sort of skill in manifesting a future based on, sometimes people misinterpret chess as a game of calculative skill or a game of intuitive skill or a game of mental stamina. And I think that there's an artistry in seeing yourself forward that includes some concoction of all of that. So I really think that is still what attracts me to the game today. And a lot of what I've done in my career, I would consider kind of the art of seeing oneself forward. And so that's what I like about the game. And it kind of works that muscle. And
I remember when I was helping you write your college entrance or admission essays. And this was before before we were into Bitcoin as family. And, but we were likening, and before you were coding, but we were likening your skills at chess with your skills on the field or on the basketball court, because people should know that Jack's also a phenomenal athlete. And remember, that was kind of like, we were trying to make this analogy between, like chess is being able to envision permutations 30 moves out, and the same as on the court or in the field with all the players. And if this happens, that happens, and then this, and if this and that. And then we wrote those. Well, I like to say that I helped you with that a lot. Maybe you wrote them myself, but
no, you did. You
but
basically
anyway, and then college wasn't your thing, and then you came back to Chicago, and you just ended up playing a lot of chess. But then you got into coding, and coding also was similar. Wasn't it Bill Gouchouin, the guy who got you into? I think he's responsible. Dad was going to the gym a lot and saying, hey, Jack's back from college, and I don't think that's going to work out for him, and I wonder what would be good. And this guy, Bill, who had worked at Apple at one point, was teaching at Columbia, teaching coding, I think, right? Was he teaching programming or game design? I can't remember. And and he said, yeah, well, if you're good at chess, then you'll be good at coding. And you took to it fantastically. But anyway, back to the chess thing growing up. I was just curious because it's before my time. When you were a kid, weren't you like state champion, Illinois state champion in first grade?
Yeah. Well, chess is broken into age groups. So sometimes when I say I was 7-year-old state champion, people assume I was 7 years old beating 60-year-olds. And although I was able to kick up every 60-year-old's ass pretty much, not all of them though, like the grandmaster 60-year-olds I was not beating, but there was K through 3, those type of divisions. And I won, a couple state championships. I was always ranked nationally. So I was definitely very good. My hatred for school started long before Satoshi Nakamoto wrote the white paper. It was actually when I started playing chess, because I was nationally competitive. So I was traveling even first, second grade, very young. And my dad would have to take me out of school, and we would travel, and my teachers didn't like that. And we got in a lot of beefs. I remember Miss Amos, my first grade, second grade, Dad, something like that, right before Dugo. She did not like the fact that I was missing like learning how to read to play competitive chess all over the country. So back then I even started beefing with the institutions long ago. But also, I think that there's a lot of assumptions in the podcast I did with Rick Rubin. People one of the takeaways was that we talked about financial markets over Thanksgiving every single year, and that my dad like groomed me to be in finance. And that's also not true. So I got into finance when I wanted to get into finance. I got into finance when I took an interest into Bitcoin. And before that, my dad was the guy that flew around the country and was at every single chess tournament. And then after that, he was our baseball coach. And then after that, he was our football coach. And then after that, he was our basketball coach. And then only after that was he a mentor to me in financial markets. So just to like set that record straight too, I could have done whatever I wanted to do, and I did do whatever I wanted to do. It wasn't until much more recently in Bitcoin actually got me into financial markets. I had no real interest professionally in finance or business. I didn't go to college and study economics or anything. It wasn't until Bitcoin that I got an interest in really anything that we talk about on the podcast. So sometimes people assume that I'm like a third generation, like I was getting whipped as a kid. Like, now explain to me what derivatives are. That's not what happened. My dad was a coach of anything I wanted to do.
Thank you.
So I know we've talked about some of the things that you were good at, but leading up into high school, I know that there's something that you're not good at, which is the reason why I think you and I met and are friends today, which is video games. You fucked at those. And we played those together, and you were really good at basketball. I was kind of a dorky kid who just really like lived on Xbox Live pretty much the entire time. And you were really, really, really bad. And we got to talking smack about it between one another. And then, push came to shove, and you were like, hey, man, if you're going to keep talking like this, you might as well just come fight me. And I feel like a little bit to my credit, I had my mom, I told my mom that I made a new friend, and I had my mom drop me off at your house to fist fight you, and we became really good friends. But that all that sidebar leads me to a separate question, which was, that was going into high school, and I kind of knew you in high school, but I kind of also didn't know you in high school. But were there any like early signs of entrepreneurial spirit back then, or was it all just kind of like anti and maybe entrepreneurial is anti, like, or at least the argument can be made to some degree, but was it all just kind of, bad student, this kid's going nowhere, like thank God he has a chessboard and can dribble a basketball? Or
I don't feel like I should be the one answering that.
I mean, did you think of an entrepreneur? I mean, I don't know why this comes to mind. It's the science experiment where
oh boy, this episode was bound to get interesting. This is fine though. This is what it's about. This podcast is all about authenticity.
Tell us about the science experiment.
I think it was like 5. You planted a seed in 5 different pots, right? And then you put one you fed with water, one you fed with Gatorade, one you fed with, like, I can't remember, and then one you pissed into. And we wanted to see which one would actually sprout. And I don't think the urine one won, but this is how serious Jack took school. And so anyway, but I'm trying to think, that wasn't entrepreneurial at all. I'm actually thinking about, you've always been a natural leader. Because I remember when we had a blizzard and all of us went out to the alley, and the snow was up to like our hips, and none of the kids knew what to do and how to, where do you start with, like clearing this enormous alley that's blanketed with 3 feet of snow. And you just got out there and you like naturally led the group, and then you were like, hey, this is so much fun. You started going around to all the neighbors and saying, hey, we'll do the alley for you. And I mean, that's the only thing I can think of right now. But entrepreneurial, I don't know. But man, once you started, once Jack started coding school and he had their first demo day, he was so, you were so amazing on the stage that Jason Fried was in the audience and he was like, who's this guy? And Jason Fried, who founded Basecamp. And that's when I think you started to, tell me if I'm wrong, started to discover. Oh, one more entrepreneurial thing is that Jack always would go down and play chess in the park in downtown Chicago, right on the lakefront. And he always came home with so much cash because he would win every single chess game for cash, right? And you were taking it off of homeless people, which was kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's all true.
yeah.
My only commentary on all that would be, yeah, so I think this was my junior year of high school. You had to author your own science experiment, and 5 plants. It was water, Gatorade, Coca-Cola.
That's right.
It was like some like detergent or something like that. It wasn't like a consumable liquid. And then the last one, I would just take a piss on it. And the I would say like the takeaway there is that I was never afraid to say you to the man, is kind of like been my like revisionary hindsight takeaway, is for my pretty much my entire life. If I believed in something, then I stayed curious about it and fought very loyally for that. And so there's always kind of been that type of the man opinion, and that was very prevalent in school. So I was never a good student, but I was always kind of like in everyone's face about it and really challenged the idea of school in the first place. And so that was all that was about. I was genuinely curious to see, like, you're supposed to water plants, but what if I piss on it? Is it going to work the same? But I also was kind of just saying F you to my teacher, and that, like, trying to make a sham of the whole thing and saying like all you got. And it was really, I still feel this way to this day. It's like all of these students that get these cute little good grades and do all this suck up and show up early and stuff. Like, I was just going to like make a mockery of this whole little system that you guys live and die on. And, Strike actually tweeted today a Satoshi quote that I really like, which Satoshi was responding to a question. This was in November of 2008. So right after he posted the white paper, not even launched the network yet. And someone had asked, how do you solve for identity? Like, who gets to update the distributed ledger? Who gets to write to this thing? Who gets to update how much money I have? How do you solve for denial of service attacks? How are you going to identify honest people versus people that are being malicious? And he says the credential that establishes someone as real is just computer power, is just supplying CPU power. And it's kind of this idea that proof of work, right? And that there is no human governance, and that things like degrees or how you dress or how many friends you have don't actually matter in this system. And then it's just like real proof of work, real human effort, real energy. And that was it. And so kind of like reminds me of that a little bit, is I was just like, before Bitcoin, I was already kind of fed up with this system. Like, I didn't like dressing up. I didn't like combing my hair. I didn't like doing all of the things that kind of like got you into the good grades and the higher honors and all that. So that was my science experiment. And I was really just experimenting with like telling the system to go f itself and seeing what would happen. And I would get in trouble all the time. That one in particular, I got in trouble. I was always kicked out of class.
Didn't the teacher one time tell you, at least one teacher said, I know he's not listening. He's just playing chess on his phone in the back of the classroom.
Yeah.
She knew it.
I know.
She loved you. So
Yeah, I was always like, for context, I never really got like suspended. I wasn't getting in fights with people, so I wasn't violent. But it was always, teachers were always like, it's more effective for me to teach these people without you in the class. So I would always be like put in like a closet effectively and given the homework and the assignments like on my own, because I was just the way they put it is I was disrupting their ability to teach, but the way I thought about it is I was showing how stupid this system was, and it was like disruptive because I would just be like, why are we doing any of this? This is dumb. And they're like, well, I can't have you encouraging people to question whether they should be sitting and listening to me or not. So I'm going to continue to preach that everyone should be wasting their time testing how to grow plants. Like, that's the dumbest thing ever. And you're going to go sit in the closet. That's pretty much what happened. But anyway, what else did you say? I don't remember shoveling snow. I've always, I've always thought the world needed better leadership, though. That was more recent, though, after being a founder and more of an adult. I don't
Right.
remember that.
Well, I think there's a couple interesting points in there. You kind of had established early on this sort of disposition towards, it sounds like authority and kind of just systems that exist for the purpose of existing without challenging, like maybe, or auditing their efficacy all the time, which I think is really interesting. But you were introduced into Bitcoin uh, at what age? 18? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that was technically my age, but like any Bitcoiner, I didn't get it. I was introduced to it because my dad got it. So technically, I knew what it was, but yeah. Also, a real quick point on the gambling in chess in the parks. So it's true. I would take public transportation. So Chicago has some of the best public transportation in the world. And so I was able to live in a suburb outside of Chicago and take the train. It cost me a couple bucks to get into the city. So this was around the time I also, as a kid, never drank alcohol, never tried a drug. So I was always later to like breaking the rules, sneaking out, like that type of stuff. I never did that. I was a very like loyal to my dad and honesty and ethics and stuff. I just would not do that. I wouldn't lie. And I had no interest anyway. So by the time everyone was starting to like sneak out and hang out with girls or drink alcohol and stuff, I would take a $2 train ride into the city and I would gamble on chess with the homeless pretty much. So Chicago had its own version of like Central Park in New York or Washington Square. It's called the Chess Pavilion on North Avenue Beach. And I would come home with a lot of cash because I'm very good at chess and I would win. But interestingly, people would think, oh, how do you win a lot of money from homeless people? If they have a lot of money for you to win, then they wouldn't be homeless. And that's true. I wouldn't win a lot of money from homeless people. Very often I was part of kind of like a hustling scheme where like, the homeless would kind of use me and say, I know you don't want to play me for money, but you could play this kid. He's looking for a game for a couple bucks. And I was very young and we would kind of sucker tourists and stuff into playing me for money. And I would always split the cash with them, or someone would come and they wouldn't want to play someone very good. So they'd play me and I'd kick their ass and I'd take cash like that. And the only reason I bring that up and am that transparent about it is I also never really felt that bad. I didn't feel like I was stealing from people. Like, I guess it also, like, everything was fair game. Like, I guess now today I would understand that as like free market, capitalism, and that, people were there. Like, the way that the parks were operated and still to this day is like, there is no central governing party to say like, here's the perfect person for you to play and we're going to guarantee you don't get to lose any money. It's like, welcome to the real world. And I was like 14 and I was surrounded by adults, and those adults were had drugs and all sorts of shit. And I was in the real world, and it was like, you are either the winner or the loser. Like, if someone else is walking out of the park with cash, someone else is walking out of the park with less cash. There was no central bank to make sure that you had the same amount of money and someone else had more. And so it was kind of that attitude of like, find a way to be a winner, win at all costs. And sorry, if you lost money, then you can show up tomorrow and be smarter. And so like that was also before Bitcoin. So it was always like very competitive, very free market. I never like was like, oh gosh, I feel so guilty. I like took money from that guy. It was like, no, because you know what? That guy was trying to take money from me. And would he feel bad about that? Probably not. Or else he wouldn't do it. So I don't know. That's also like noteworthy. It's just kind of always a little tough guy attitude.
Where do you think that that competitive nature comes from? Do you think that's like something you're born with? Like, have you just always been like that, no matter what?
You're very quiet today. Um, has Jack always been competitive
Yeah.
in your memory?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I don't know. I don't know if I was born with it or not. I don't know about that. Were you as competitive, Dad?
I mean, that one of the weird things, but pretty much the only thing you compete at, when you're 6 years old is t-ball, or I don't even think we had that. Chess competitions, you're up on a stage, parents are not allowed to watch, or they might give some type of indicator. So, I mean, it's a very stressful. I'm not sure really a very healthy thing for 7-year-olds to get into. It's like you say, you used to. Jack had his little nervous tick. One was chewing. You weren't even aware you were doing that. You had chew on your shirts, and I would get your shirts back, and they'd be like moth tatters
Holes and
because you
yeah.
chew holes into them. Yeah, no, has Jack always been competitive? Yeah, but I think part of that, he's always been competitive. But if your natural talent, like I said, was t-ball or something, it's not nearly as bad. Chess is really hard. I think youth chess is just hard.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing sports, you're like you say, your dad's down the third base line. Stay in there, keep your head down, or whatever. Make the turn. Watch me. You can be supportive. You can't do any of that with chess, right? You're just on your own, and it's competitive, and it's also kids are shitty too. Remember, you'd catch people cheating, even in youth chess. Jack famously caught a guy. Took a break, went out into the lobby, walked around, and went to the bookstore and looked in the book to help him with the position. You were playing with the opening you were
It's
playing.
the French opening.
Yeah, it's like yeah, I know. Well, we had a good laugh at that, but no, yeah, was Jack always been competitive? Yeah, but chess is part of that problem. I thought was chess. I thought there are healthy ways for your kid to be competitive, but chess ain't one of them. Right?
Yeah. But I mean, every coach always said, "God, I wish I could adopt Jack as my own son."
Yeah,
so
on a team sport type of thing. Yeah,
on a team, I never felt that you were trying to outplay, look better than your teammates. You were a team player, and especially in basketball, I'm thinking. But that competitiveness isn't always just like me first. I'm just only out for myself. It's not that, right, Jack? I mean, your competitiveness, even now with Strike, is right now you've got a larger purpose where you feel like I'm not only running this company that's so cool, is I'm changing the world. I mean, this Strike has a purpose. I have a purpose, and which is a much larger stage, like humanity, than the Little League game. So
Yeah, I think it's just always about winning. Sometimes people misconstrue competitive nature as being self-interested. To your point, which I don't describe myself as that. I just like, for example, senior year basketball. For people familiar enough with the game of basketball, like I don't know if I would average one shot attempt a game. I was there. Our best player was our point guard, and I was always on the court to defend the other team's best player to give him energy to score. And so I was taking charges. I was diving for loose balls. I was expending my energy on defense so that our best players had energy on offense. And it was just like all those little type of things to just make sure we won. I never really cared about personal stats or anything, and that's still true to this day. Like I just want Bitcoin to win, and I'm kind of here. The way I've been described as a teammate is, you love to have him on your team and you hate to play against him.
yeah,
Just very ruthless, like win at all costs. Yeah, I'm just gonna like for coding boot camp, even like it was hard to be my classmate. I was 18 and I was there at 5 a.m. in the like school facilities, and I was driving home at 10 p.m. And like my classmates couldn't stand that because I was like, had a list of questions for the instructor. I never wanted to go to the bar at lunch. I never wanted, like, I was just very about business, about winning, about being the best, and very ruthless in that way. So like,
But then how'd you go from pissing on a plant to that with coding boot camp?
but it was always that way. It just depended on like, I thought engineering was productive. Like, if you're going to sit and tell me to like come up with some science experiment, and the people that got A's, again, they're like proper and dressed well and sucked up to the teacher. And it was like, okay, fine. I have to be part of this system. I'm going to piss on it. But for coding stuff, it was literally piss on it and figuratively piss on it. But for coding, and I would say I was never necessarily a great engineer. I was a good hacker. And that was going to be my comment on the entrepreneur stuff. I'm not sure I ever was intending to be an entrepreneur, to be honest. I would say I would always want to win and at things that I obviously care about. And I think becoming an entrepreneur ended up being the most effective way for me to help us win. But it was never my goal in the first place. Like, I think earlier in Bitcoin, I applied to every company. I was trying to get a job. Before that, I was in open source, and I would say when I was an engineer, I was just hacking. I was really good at hacking and making something come to life. To kind of, like I said, like the art of moving yourself forward, kind of manifesting something together, like pushing some momentum towards a direction. So I was able to hack together apps or hack together websites just to kind of like get my foot in the door to a next meeting, or get an investor to understand the vision, or get a few customers to like see the initial market value proposition of like what I was working on. I've never engineered anything though that was used by a million people or something. Eventually with Strike, I had to hire someone to do that. So I was never like, top of the computer science class or anything. And I don't think I was ever an entrepreneur in the sense that I've never been super interested in like the San Francisco entrepreneurial school, meaning like sometimes people go to meetups after work and they geek out about like, as a founder, are you one of those that think founders should work 12 hours a day or 2 hours a day, but only on the most important? Or are you a like hire fast, fire slow, fire fast? I was never that. I was like, I'm here to win. And like, I'm here to win. I'm here to make Bitcoin win. And I'm here to push what I think is important. And at some point, being a founder was necessary for us to win. I felt like, I'm very open about this. I felt like Coinbase and Brian Armstrong weren't helping. I felt like weren't helping. And I felt like I was capable of being a good enough leader and knew like what to do to help us win. And so it's kind of like putting on the football pads and like getting in the game. If you're a fan, I was at the Bears game here in London on Sunday, and the first quarter we didn't get a first down. And the guy I'm sitting next to was like, "You got to suit up and get in there. You seem more fired up than our guys." And that's kind of how it felt founding Strike, is like as if I could have just suited up and gotten on the field instead of just yelling at the players. He's like, you can only yell at Coinbase enough. You can only yell at people that Ethereum is dumb enough before I was like, fine, you know what? I'll raise my own capital, get my own licenses, and push the world forward the way I think it should be pushed. Because I think Bitcoin's the opportunity. I think Bitcoin financial institutions are important. And so that was more it. But it was never like, like I looked up to Jack Dorsey. I didn't look up to Elon Musk. It wasn't this like entrepreneurial fantasy dream. I don't know if any of this is resonating, but I was never like a prolific engineer, and I never nerded out on Silicon Valley either. Like still to this day, I never like turned 18 and like drove a van to the valley and like sniffed Mark Zuckerberg's lawn. That I never did that. It was just
yeah. I mean, you came at it from a very distinctly almost Chicago unique way. The way I think about how the rise of what led up to the invention of Strike was a couple year process of like getting involved with the Blocksize Wars and saying, telling Vinny Lingham, you want to bet? I'm gonna, when Vinny's like, hey, Lightning's never gonna take off. I'm a consumer tech guy. Trust me, no one's ever gonna use it. And Jack famously tweeted at him, want to bet? And it was the kind of the beginning of you were gonna, well, right? That was November of 2017, and you were already started working on Zap, but you were definitely going to determined to make Lightning work for everybody, and there again, that fighting spirit kind of thing. So it was nice that you had that challenge. Anyway, sorry, I was trying to turn it back to how Strike was invented and how you started in 2017 with inventing Zap, and how in your journey towards organically becoming this entrepreneur that you didn't really plan on being.
Yeah. I don't know, Dylan, if that's the direction you want to take it.
Yeah. We got like 15 minutes left, so I think we should. Yeah, let's start there. Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, well, just like even before Zap and Strike, Lightning itself, it's so unfortunate that the people in Bitcoin today weren't there for the Blocksize Wars, and that will just be like a piece of history that we'll have to try to explain what it was like. But it really was like an existential threat, it felt like at the time, to Bitcoin existing. And so things like Lightning weren't like cool ideas. At the time, they were like, we have to prove that this is going to work for people to not fork Bitcoin and concentrate it with a bunch of companies. And that's like what it felt like at the time. And so, again, me getting into Lightning, I initially became like, my work in Bitcoin wasn't even, again, it wasn't like crazy prolific engineering. It was, I took this protocol that I knew was the best way to scale Bitcoin. It was like, we should not hard fork. We should not change consensus rules. We should not dictate the future of Bitcoin in boardrooms. Now this is more known. At the time, it wasn't. And so I took this protocol and I made it real. So I built the first wallet where you could like see it and people could click a button and move Bitcoin instantly and for free. And I would post these videos on Twitter, and I would post myself talking about how it worked. And I was just humanizing it. I was making it real. I was making it relatable. And the only reason I did that is, again, so that everyone could see like, oh, this Lightning stuff can work. We can actually scale Bitcoin through layers. We shouldn't actually fork and break consensus. We shouldn't actually allow miners to dictate how the protocol works or is upgraded. And it was like, it was just that contribution. And then I think Strike's just been an evolution of exactly that exercise, though, which is like finding something you believe in, competing to win, like ruthlessly defending, right? Like not being afraid to say you to the man. Like it was always not being afraid to say, Brian Armstrong, you're wrong, or Roger Ver, you're wrong, and stick up, stand for what's right. I really found my home in the Bitcoin community too, because if you go back and you see like a kid that didn't align with his classmates, I was never the tallest or the fastest, or I couldn't read the best or the best at math and stuff. And I like thought I was in the school system that didn't really like allow me to like be who I wanted to be. And so Bitcoiners were the best. They're like, they thought outside the box, they were very ethical, moral, honest, but like ruthlessly true, like free market capitalist thinkers, right? And so it's like, stick up to the man with the Bitcoiners, tell these people to themselves, don't be afraid, stand up for what's right, be true, compete ruthlessly, and we're going to win if we can just defend this thing that Satoshi created for us. And so that's just like been the evolution of Strike. And then after the Blocksize Wars and Zap was created, then like people had to use the wallet, and then we had users, and then I had to figure that out. And then all of a sudden these users wanted new features. And then all of a sudden I realized like this thing is a payment network that could do better. Like my favorite story is there's an engineer in the UK and I was in the US, And we were testing the Lightning Network and sending money back and forth instantly and at no cost. And we sat there and we we're like, wait, this is an instant and free cross-border payment because you're on the other side of a border. But the only reason people aren't thinking of it that way is because we're using this Bitcoin thing that people write off as not real. But if I were to like swap from dollars to Bitcoin right before I sent it to you, and you were to swap from Bitcoin to pounds right after I sent it to you, then all of a sudden we would like do something that was physically impossible before, which is like a dollar pound free instant cross currency payment. And it was like little things like that. And then I was like, well, this is more utility for Bitcoin. This is a vision that people don't understand. And this is going to help us win more. And it was just like these little iterations like that. And then it was like, wow, someone was willing to actually fund Strike and believe in me. And we can get the licenses Coinbase has. And so now I can actually show the world what I think is better than Coinbase and prioritize solid engineering, customer service, a focus on Bitcoin, a dedication to uptime, like all of these products that I think people actually should care about more and that are going to win in the end. And like, anyway, it's just been like a very natural evolution. It was never like, oh, my dream is to make, the Times list or win Entrepreneur of the Year or anything like that. It was never that. It was like,
if I could just interject, one of the things that I do, it's so organic because I think when you were building Zap, sorry if I don't have the details correct, you just had a Slack channel and anybody could join it. And so suddenly Mr. Fountain's on there. And I mean, these engineers from all over the world were just suddenly like, contributing, and you were just like around basically. And suddenly, and these were really good engineers, you didn't even know their names. And so, right in the beginning, it was truly organic how you built Strike. This wasn't like VC funded, invented, or at all. This was, when Jack says hacking in the basement, he wasn't, I guess you were in the basement. Or were you in the rec room at that time? But it's still, you were just putting it together on your own. And I just love the fact that some of the guys who were contributing early are still like major players in the Strike team, right?
But that's what it was.
Beautiful story.
It was an open source project, and it was like a movement, and that's kind of always what it's been. It still feels that way when I come out to Bitcoin Amsterdam or I'm at conferences and stuff. When I connect with our customers, it always feels different. It feels like, our Strike's customers, we're all on the same team and we're all working towards the same goal, and it's a movement, and that's very different. I think like when you go to the grocery store and you're checking out with the person bagging your groceries, you don't have that. Like you're not on the same team as that person. Like you don't have that level of relationship and camaraderie. And so, I don't know. It's always been that way. And,
well, I think something super interesting about your entrepreneurial journey, which I've been a part of just since the Zap days, but we published blog posts explaining every sort of time we iterated on a product. So if we updated Zap, or if Zap then led to kind of a new idea, right, which was, I believe, once upon a time, this product that we were working on called Olympus, and then kind of solving the pain points for Olympus read a different way, iterating on that product kind of led us to some of the realizations that, became the pillars of Strike. And so I encourage anyone who's curious about the journey. We literally published, blog posts where you can literally read and see how the product has iterated over time. I think that's just kind of an interesting part of the story. But we go from Zap, we go to Olympus, which all of these kind of have this lightning themed, component to the name. Olympus being where the Greek gods lived. Zap obviously being like a lightning zap. But how did you come up with the name Strike, and why did you ultimately land on Strike?
Well, you were there, so it's funny you ask me all these questions. You've been here for all.
Well, I think people want to know. I guess then tell the people how this happened.
Um, I well, this was the only one I actually named. I think you named every other product. Um, I don't. I mean, I actually don't remember the exact details. You're asking the question as if you're alluding to some like really hilarious story, and I'm trying to think if there is a hilarious story, or if people are just curious about the name itself. I mean, it had multiple meanings, of course, like strike, the word of like striking something. It's forceful, it's powerful, it's confident. And that was always kind of like how I felt myself and what resonated about, Bitcoin with me and what I would want in a brand. I always thought, Bitcoin is going to be the biggest brand in the world. Even right now, today, it's like a $1.3 trillion brand. And how big is Apple? Apple's like a $2-3 trillion brand, right? So Bitcoin brand power wise is up there with Apple. It's bigger than Nike in some respects, and it's more global. It also is it's more meaningful to people. It's more emotional. And so I've always thought brand wise, like the opportunity to build a big global brand that was powerful and confident and striking. And so strike in that sense, strike also is literally, from it travels, a strike is from point A to point B, whether it's a punch or a meteor or something. And so it was payments, right? Is Bitcoin, it was moving value. So it was that. And then the last meaning was like a meteor. And it kind of always felt like Bitcoin was this like meteor approaching the financial system that was just going to like blow it up. And it's always funny. It's like, what happens once every there's always that answer we still ask today of like kind of what happens when everyone realizes Bitcoin, or what happens when it's the same thing of like what happens when like the Death Star, like the ultra meteor thing hits planet Earth. And the truth is like we don't really know, but we're kind of like living in that era of like there's this Bitcoin thing that's just getting closer and it's just getting bigger and it's like approaching us like what's going to happen when this thing strikes and changes the world as we know it. And that also kind of resonated. And so that's why we went with it. I think we also went with it because we had to pick a name. I was very always forceful with getting things to market, not waiting. And, like I'm a big fan of you're not going to build the perfect thing in 1,000 days. What you're going to do is make something each day a little better and show people and then like learn about it. And investors going to tell you this thing sucks. Your customer's not going to use it or your friend's going to think it's ugly. But then 1,000 days later of constantly improving something and just ruthlessly, like I did at coding school, show up at 5, leave at 10, then you're going to have something great. You're not going to have something great just like quietly in your room by yourself working on it for 1,000 days and then launching it one day. So we had to come up with a name, and I just wanted to get the ideas out there into the world, and I didn't think it mattered that much about what it was called. So we ran out of time, and so we just called it Strike. And then logo wise, like the little like meteor type thing, but also has these 3 lines on it. And then, it was kind of like pissing on my science experiment. We turned the meteor 69 degrees from a middle finger. And it was kind of like it always felt, and I remember doing the design thing and is like, well, okay, Jack, the designer we were working with is like, okay, well, blue is a color that is used to symbolize trust, right? Chase is blue, Coinbase is blue, blue resonates with trust, the sky is blue, and red resonates with danger or aggression. So we shouldn't be red, we should be a version of blue. And I was like, I want to be black. I want to be black and white. And it was for no other reason than to just kind of be punk and be like, guess what, Brian Armstrong? I got funding now. So a Bitcoiner's got funding and a Bitcoiner can get licenses. And now I'm here to compete. And so I'm going to make my logo 69 degrees from a middle finger to tell all you guys to go yourself. And I'm going to be black and not blue because I can. That's why. And there was no teacher that was going to ground me or kick me out of school, or there was none of that. It was like free market, free rules. I'm going to build for Bitcoiners, be loyal, be competitive, be a winner, and see what shakes out and be fearless about it. And then we launched the blog post, and that was pretty much how we did it, more or less.
Yeah, been rocking on it ever since.
5 years ago this week in a
Yeah.
hotel room in Paris. Pretty
In a
cool.
hotel room in Paris. That was when I came up with a lot of the ideas. Yeah. And some of those ideas also didn't work. But to my point earlier, you just wake up and
Right.
compete, be honest, be loving, be loyal, and just try hard and win somehow. Walk out of the park with more money than you walked in with. Because if you're not that guy, then you're the loser. And so then you find your way. And, we've got customers and just listen to them and build for what we think is right. I will say before we close the episode out, just like these people on the podcast have been there the whole way through my journey. So all of these little projects that we brought up, like my parents would finance it and make sure I could cover rent, or make sure that I could get a new laptop to run the server, or get on the plane to meet an investor before anyone believed in me or was willing to fund me, like my dad did. And so that is just the reason I'm here, pretty much. And like Brooke said, she wrote all the essays to try and get me into school. So, or I mean, you edited all the blog posts that Dylan referenced too,
Early
and
on.
wrote those. So, yeah, just, I think I I gave this answer somewhere. I don't really remember. Um, for me at least, there are moments along the journey where people believe in you more than you believe in yourself, and those are really critical moments along the journey where you'll look back and be most grateful for. I've had many of those, and you'll also realize that those are very important people to you. Um, and those are usually the people that you should keep close and continue to rely on and go back to in really difficult times. And so, obviously, to have parents that were able to believe in me more than I believed in myself along the way is why I've achieved anything at all and have had the opportunity to find the courage to eventually believe in myself enough. And Dylan, too. Like, the story of Dylan is we grew up together, but Dylan had a job. He was going to get like he first was going to be a doctor, then was going to he was in a master's program at Northwestern University. It's like one of the nicest universities in America, in the world. And I convinced him basically to just trust me and like believe in me. And he has been that person as well, where, like I said, I never thought of myself as some like super smart entrepreneur or really good coder. I always just was going to try as hard as I could and be the best I could be. And Dylan also like totally dropped out of school and like really trusts me a lot. Like, I would feel really guilty if this didn't work out because so anyway, and there's all sorts of people like along the way. Just for other entrepreneurs out there, there are going to be moments where there are people that believe in you more than you believe in you. And anyway,
Yeah.
so just very thankful for you guys.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't know if you want to close this out. I can close this out, but let us know if you like this format. Really, let me know if you like this format. We got about I would say, what did we get through, Brooke? Like maybe 1/4 of, I think, all of the things on the agenda.
Yeah. If people want
So
more, we have
yeah,
more.
if people are interested in a part 2 of this, maybe we get around to
Yeah.
that. As far as next week goes, it looks like there's some pretty decent price action, and so yeah, Jack, sign us off.
I don't know. I mean, sort of a weird episode in the sense that it's like about me and it's just strange. But I love the being a Mallers, growing up under my dad. It's ethics, morals, integrity. He's always like, be the teammate that's first to help your guy off the floor. So that's kind of how we do this podcast, is just be honest, be transparent with you guys. You guys want to know more about my journey and my entrepreneurial insights? Let's go. So I don't know. Hopefully this was useful. If not, we'll never do it again. Little awkward. Never in my life did I think we'd be recording a podcast with lots of listeners. My parents talking about when I pissed on plants my junior year of high school, but here we are. And I think it's kind of meaningful. It's kind of cool. It kind of goes along with the theme of like the man. There's no reason we need to do anything any other way than our own way. And that's the way our family's done it, and we've done it, and Strike does it, and deathly loyal to our customers and deathly committed to winning and being the best we can be for you guys. So I don't know. Maybe next month or next week, we'll get back to financial insights because Bitcoin's breaking 66K, and I'm sure all the comments are going to be like, "What the." We didn't get any insights from Dollar Bill, so maybe it flips back.
I'll be here next week. I'm out. That reminds me, I'm out. I think the first week of February.
Oh, is that right?
I'll be in the New Orleans Superdome, I believe.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you might be.
The Chicago Bears look good. It's typical Bear fan. You know, what makes me nervous is we get the two worst teams in football and the Panthers and the Jaguars. And so I'm always cautiously optimistic with the Bears, but
I'm always cautiously optimistic when the quarterback for the Chicago Bears throws 4 touchdown passes. No, that's when I'm wildly optimistic because I've never seen that either. Yes, this is our year.
I don't disagree. Cool. Well, thank you guys to the listeners and especially to you guys on the podcast.
Good job.
Good job, you guys. We're proud of you.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.